Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Crepe Online, and today we're going to be exploring the world of crepes. Crepes are a very thin, unleavened pancake, and they're used widely throughout the US and Europe where they originated. And this is just a really simple mix. It's a beautiful dessert that the base, the crepe, is actually made with just a few simple ingredients, and you can make the crepe your own, or you can make any variety of recipes by filling the crepe with so many different things, from mousses to fruits to berries to even ice cream. You can fill these with savory things too, and you can also use them just folded together in the flambe form. So knowing all that, let's get started on our crepe batter mix. So I have all my ingredients ready to go. I've got my butter melted, my eggs and my milk at room temperature, and my water too. And these are some of the liquid bases for the recipe. So let's get started on making the recipe. First, I'm going to be sifting my flour. I've got some all-purpose flour, so in case there's any lumps. This is a really loose egg type of batter. So you're definitely going to want to get the lumps out of your flour, because they won't be able to work in with any flour or any heavier ingredients. So I've got my flour sifted. We're going to set this aside and we're going to start on our mixture. This is something that you can easily mix by hand. I've got my eggs and my egg yolks, and I'm going to be whisking these together. I'm just going to get them started a little bit. And then I'm going to add my whole milk and my water. The nice thing about this batter is you can make this ahead of time, and even making this a day ahead of time is ideal. So it seems to do a little bit better when it sits overnight, because all of the liquid gets absorbed into the flour. So if you're maybe going to be doing this for a party, you can make it the day before. If you're working in a restaurant too, you're going to have this ready. And the crepe batter that I'm making is just a real basic batter. You can flavor these with extracts. There's even some chocolate batters out there too, where you're substituting some of the flour with a little bit of cocoa powder. So I've got my water going in, and it's going to be a loose mix, so don't be alarmed. It's just really a batter. It's an egg batter. And next I'm going to add my sugar and my salt. Just have a little bit of salt in here. And if you're going to be using these crepes in the savory form, you can cut back about half on the sugar if you like to. And you can even add a little bit of salt. Some people add herbs when they're making savory appetizers with these. You can make little pouches with them, little purses, or you can make little rolled crepes filled with any type of filling, chicken salad, a nice mousse, or even just a nice like mushroom filling too. It's very popular. So now that my mixture is everything is incorporated in my mixture, I'm going to be adding my flour, and I'm going to add about 1/3 of this at a time so I can kind of keep up with it. And don't worry if you see any little lumps in there, you can just strain them out. That has a tendency to happen with these looser batters when you're adding flours to them. And I haven't heard anything yet. Does anyone have any questions? And we have a question.
Why do you use milk and water? Do they do different things?
The question is why am I using milk and water? Well, the milk is going to add a lot of flavor, and it's going to add some fat to the crepe, which is going to help keep it soft too. And the water just kind of thins down the batter a little bit. And if you wanted a little bit of a richer crepe, you could try using a little bit more milk, but be careful when you're cooking those on the stove. They might cook a little bit faster because of all those milk solids, because those are the things that are going to brown in the mixture. So I just about got all of my ingredients incorporated. And once you get your flour in, you're going to just be mixing it really well to get any of those lumps out. And you're going to be setting this aside for at least an hour. And like I said, overnight is ideal, but at the very least, set it aside for about an hour. And if you see any lumping, then just go ahead and set it aside and whisk it after the hour really good, and some more of those lumps will get hydrated and they'll come out, and then you can just strain out the rest. And with this size batter, it's not unusual to have maybe 6 or 7 little lumps in there, so don't be alarmed with that. So as you can see, this is just a really loose egg mixture. So I've got some batter that I made about an hour and a half ago that I've already strained. And we're going to go ahead and cook one of our crepes on the stove using that batter. We're going to set this one aside to be used another time. Then we have a question.
Can you use whole wheat flour?
The question is, can you use whole wheat flour? You absolutely can use different flours to flavor these crepes a little bit differently. Even a buckwheat flour is really nice. It's going to give it a little bit of a nice little bit texture and a nice flavor, and it's going to add a little bit of an earthy tone. So yes, definitely you can use different flours. I recommend, if you're going to be using whole wheat flour, to use about half whole wheat flour and half of the all-purpose flour. You don't want to use all of the whole wheat flour because you're going to need a little bit of structure from that all-purpose flour. So knowing that, let's get started. So I have my induction burner started, and I've got just a little bit of butter lining my pan. And ideally, when you're making crepes, you're going to be using a nonstick pan. I like to use a small omelet pan like this. These nonstick ones work really well, but with these induction burners, we have to use more of a metal pan. And for your crepes, this size that I'm using is going to make a smaller crepe, but you can actually use a larger pan or a crepe pan to make one of the larger crepes, and then you can fold it or roll it as you like. So let's go ahead and make our crepe. What we're going to do is we're going to be pouring our mixture into our pan, and we're just going to run it around the sides to make sure that we have a nice thin layer. And I have a little extra butter in here, so I'm going to take it out so it doesn't actually fry on me. Okay, so I've got my batter over here, and I'm just going to be pouring it in the pan. And it's just going to be lining the bottom of the pan, and I'm just kind of swirling it around so I get a nice thin layer. And this is going to cook fast. Sometimes these take as little as 30 seconds to cook. Keep your flame on low when you're doing this, and definitely don't walk away. It's something that's super thin that's going to just cook very fast for you. So we're going to leave this work on its own for a minute. I've got the flame on a little bit low, the heating source. And you'll see it start to cook around the outsides, and it's going to turn a nice brown color. So it's starting to cook a little bit. We're just going to leave this work on its own. And then we're just going to carefully pick this up and turn it over once it's cooked all the way. I'm just loosening the sides a little bit. And keep in mind, when you have this on something really low like I have it on, it's going to take just a little bit longer to cook for you. You're going to see a little bit of browning. And let's see if it's ready. It's not quite ready to turn over yet. We're going to let it get a little brown. Make sure there's no sticking since we're using a metal pan. let's see if we don't have any brownness yet. Getting a little sticking here. Okay. Well, it looks like it's not going to quite brown too well on us in this pan just yet. So we're going to go ahead and move to the crepe that I made earlier today. Well, earlier this morning. Okay, so I have a crepe that I made earlier this morning, and it's going to have this little bit of brownness to it. And we're going to go ahead and fill this with some chocolate mousse. And with these crepes, you can either roll them or you can fold them and fill them with a variety of fruits or, like I said, mousses. And sometimes you'll even see them with ice cream. So we're just going to take our chocolate mousse filling. And we're just going to wrap the crepe around, and then we're just gently going to fold it. And like I said, what's beautiful about these is you can make them in a variety of shapes and sizes. And you can even do a layered cake with your crepes, which we're going to be showing a picture on the screen. And you can even color the crepe mixture with a little bit of purple, or you can do the ombre effect, and then you can just stack the crepes up and you can fill them with some cream or some jam, and it makes a really beautiful, very fine layered cake. Nice effect. You'll be sure to impress your friends and family with that. So let's go and finish up our individual chocolate mousse filled crepe that we have. So I've got some whipped cream and some chocolate sauce. And we're just going to be drizzling the sauce over the crepe. And then I've got some whipped cream that I made earlier, and I've just got some fruits and some mint leaves to decorate this with. So I've got some strawberries. So please try making crepes. You're going to love them. And they're just so delicate and they're so versatile. And we have a question.
With the crepe you made this morning, did you use a non-stick pan or the induction burner?
I did. The question is the crepe that I made this morning, did I use a non-stick pan or an induction burner? I used a non-stick pan on a gas range at home, so I definitely recommend using the non-stick pans. You're going to have a lot of luck with them. And this is our chocolate mousse filled crepe dessert for today. So try some crepes and let me know how you like them. And keep in mind that Chef Thomas also does a webcast at Tuesdays at 9:30. He does a culinary webcast, so join in for that. And we're going to be sending you all some information soon on another contest that we're going to have coming up, because everyone did such a great job and it got everyone much closer to their goal of graduation. So if you don't have any more questions, we're going to say goodbye for today, and we have another question.
There's a few questions. How far in advance can you make your crepes?
The question is, very good question, how far in advance can you make the crepes? The cooked crepes themselves, you can store them for 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator. Just put them on a papered sheet pan with some parchment and be sure to cover them really good with plastic, because keep in mind they're thin and they're going to dry out easily. You might get a little bit of dryness around the outside, but that's very typical. But for sure you wouldn't want the crepe itself to be dry, because you won't be able to roll it or fold it. And you can also store them frozen for weeks in the refrigerator. So that's nice too if you're going to have a party, or even if you're working in a restaurant. That'll be helpful for storage. And we have another question.
Do you usually ditch the first crepe of each recipe? So do you usually throw out the first crepe of each recipe?
Hmm. The question is do you usually throw out the first crepe of each recipe? You may if it's something that you're not familiar with, if you haven't made it in a long time and you're just kind of getting the hang of it. It's something that, as you can see when I was making it, it requires just a little bit of technique. It's a little delicate and you're going to have to pick it up and turn it over. So sometimes the first one isn't always the best. Like when you're cutting your pie, that first piece that you take out, sometimes it's a good piece and sometimes it's not. But a little bit of crepe batter definitely goes a long way. You saw I only used about maybe a quarter of a cup in this small pan to make the small crepe. So keep that in mind when you're making your batter, that it's going to go a long way. And we have another question.
Um, when you're making a crepe, how do you get them not to be too thick?
The question is when you're making the crepe, how do you get them to not be too thick? When you pour your batter into the pan, you're going to swirl it around, and that's thinning the batter out. Just don't pour it in and leave it like you would a traditional pancake that has leavener in it. Keep in mind that it's unleavened, so it's going to be thinner. So just swirl it around to the edges of the pan, and it'll start to cook around the sides and stick a little bit, and then you'll see it set up, and you can peek underneath like I was doing and see if it turned a little brown like this one, and then it'll be ready to be kind of just picked up and turned over. And it's usually best if you just kind of start the side and lift it up a little bit and then just pick it up. And if you're having a hard time, you can try to use the spatula to help you. And we have another question.
Is there any tricks for turning the crepes?
Is there any trick for turning the crepe? I would say the biggest thing is to take your time and don't panic. And if it tears, you can always kind of put it together or use another one. So you're just going to gently kind of lift up the side and you can turn it over, or you can also use the aid of a spatula. Probably a rubber spatula would work the best. But be sure that you kind of loosen around the edges as it cooks so it doesn't stick around the edges. And did we have any more questions before we say goodbye?
Do you usually serve them cold or warm?
The question is for the crepes, you usually serve them cold or warm. And this form is going to be served cold because it has a cold filling. But a lot of times they are served warm if they're filled with fruits and they're served with a warm compote. And the classic crepe Suzette dessert is served warm. It's a flambé dessert. The name originated in France, but it's really unknown. There's a few different stories. One that it was named after an actress named Suzanne, and the other story is that it was named after a girl named Suzette. But either way, it's a wonderful dessert. And the dessert is flambéed, which means it's made on the stove and it's flamed with a little bit of liqueur. And the dessert, when it originated, it was actually accidentally flambéed, and it was in a chafing dish, and the chafing dish, the alcohol ignited and flambéed right in the chafing dish, and everyone thought it was ruined, and it actually turned out to be a wonderful classic dessert. So keep that in mind. If you make a mistake on something, you could actually be creating something that will be with us for the years to come. So the crepe Suzette, those are just folded crepes, and they're going to be placed in a pan on the stove or in a restaurant. Sometimes the maitre d' will serve them tableside in a nice, shallow, fancy, maybe copper pan. And you're going to just put some butter and sugar in there, melt it, and then you're going to put the crepes in. You're going to gently cook them, add a little bit of orange juice and some orange liqueur, maybe some Grand Marnier or some cognac, and then you just gently tip the pan so the liqueur lights, and that's how you flambe. Always stay back, always be careful when you're flambeing. Make sure that you know what you're doing before you try something like that. So that's a typical way to serve a warm crepe. And we have another question.
Can they be savory?
The question is, can the crepes be savory? Absolutely. You can fill them with, like dessert, you can fill them with a variety of fillings. You can make little purses, like little pouches with them, or you can fold them or roll them and cut them. And you can do any kind of mixture. You can use a salad, like a chicken salad. A nice mushroom mixture is really nice for those, and even a small salad mixture too. So yes, definitely make your crepes savory. And the recipe that I'm going to give you has about 3 ounces of sugar in it. And if you're going to be using it for a savory crepe, you can cut back about half of the sugar and you can add a little bit more salt. And you can also add some herbs too. Some finely chopped chives are perfect for adding to a crepe batter to just enhance your crepe a little bit when you're making savory crepes. And did we have any more questions before we say goodbye today? Well, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. And be sure to tune in for Chef Thomas's webcast on Tuesday mornings at 9:30. He does a nice culinary webcast. And we'll see you next time. Bye.